if you've been following along on the series, and you know that we've already created ourselves a lot of categories for me to be able to put posts into or kind of organize them. And so I like to do that before I actually start writing a lot of the posts on a website, just because it gives me the structure, or it gives me some kind of direction as to where I'm going to be going when it comes to my content itself. So I've got 6 categories created, and you can see that here it says 6 categories. What I'm going to do now is focus in on posts. So I'm going to hover over posts, and I'm going to choose add new. And that's going to give me now the ability to create myself a new post from scratch. At the very top, this is going to be the title, and if you click off of it, you can actually see it says enter title here. So this is going to be the title of my post, and it's going to appear, usually the theme that you have on your WordPress site is going to have it stick out a little bit more, so it's going to kind of give it a little bit more pop as far as what the title is going to be. So come up with something that would be unique for it. And on this particular one, it's going to be for a bicycle, and so I'm going to go ahead and use the bike as a Scott. That's the brand, and it's a scale series, 29-inch wheels, and it's the elite version of that. So that's the bike that I'm going to go ahead and focus in on this one here, and you can see that I've got my categories, bikes. You can check that anytime before you, or even after you save it, you can check it and change these up, but that's where I want it to belong, so I'm going to make sure that it's in that category itself. It's going to be a bike. And then we've also got our content that we can type in. Now, I want to point out there's going to be a couple different things here. Depending if you're using WordPress.com or if you're using your own hosted site, you may not see all 3 of these icons. You may only see the first icon, which is going to be just to add media, which if I wanted to add a picture or a PDF or some kind of like spreadsheet or Word document or something like that to my particular post itself, I can add those in there. This one here also gives us an option using WordPress.com to add a poll, and then we've also got the option of creating ourselves a custom form, which is an interesting thing to do, but we can later on we can create a form and have people submit a custom form with custom different field names, submit information to a email address on our website. So we're going to come back to those later, but I want to point out the 2 things that you'll see here on the WordPress you're working with. You're going to see a visual tab and you're going to see an HTML tab. The visual tab is going to be more like a text editor where you can actually type in the text, you can hit enter, you can do things here like bolding and italicizing things, you're going to be able to put lists and so forth on there. Where the HTML, you can do some of that as well, but it's more focused for those people who like to write code and actually write the tags in here. If you are going to be writing an HTML tag, you must do it in here, because if you put it in the visual, and let me just show you, if I were to do something like a, well, let's do an H3 tag. And I can type in hello, and we'll go ahead and close the H3 tag, like we would do if you were writing tags for HTML. And if I were to now click on HTML, you'll see that I converted those to different characters. It's not actually reading it as a tag, so I'd have to actually remove that. Let's go back to the HTML, and I'm going to do it from this version just to show you. Hello, and then close that. And now if I were to convert it back over to visual, you can see that it says hello, and it's actually a little bit larger of a size. And if I come back here, you can see the tags there. So you must be in the HTML tab here in order to write the HTML tags on your particular page. And you can do most of those basic HTML tags that we've seen throughout the years, 10, 15 years ago, will work in here, like the table tag and all of the heading tags and even break tags and paragraph tags. So all those common ones for those HTML code writers, we can add them in here, and it has no problem with that. I would just be careful when you're writing it. If you're testing some of the newer different types of HTML5 and so forth, just be kind of cautious and see if it works, because I haven't gone through and tested all of them, but I know in the past that it hasn't been able to support everything. So you might want to just test it when you're working with it if you are a coder. Now I'm going to come back here to the visual side of it, and I'm actually just going to go ahead and type in some content. So this is the Scott scale 29. I could type in something like the new custom, let's see, butted 60, 61, aluminum, and then I could just keep going ahead and adding my content. Now if I were to, and I got to check for my spelling errors and stuff, but if I were to add content, I could keep adding it more and more and more, and I can do some things like bolding, and you can see that if I wanted to bold something, I can bold it here, unbold it, I could italicize it or do a strike through. I can also come through here and make it an unordered list. And so I'm going to go ahead and paste some text in here, and I'll show you how to do a list once I've got enough content in here. Alright, so I've posted some extra text in here rather than typing it all in. And I want to point out a couple things for you if you're not familiar with working in some kind of editor like this. If I were to type in the Scott scale 29 Elite again, and then hit enter. What you're going to notice here is whenever I hit the enter, and so I'll just kind of point out I hit enter there, you'll notice that it went ahead and did a paragraph return. Basically it put in kind of like a 1.5 spacing type of a field to this formatting here, where you can separate different paragraphs. And so typically at the end of a paragraph we would hit enter and start a new paragraph. However, for whatever reason I wanted to do what's called a line break, or for those HTML tag people it's going to be a break tag. What I want to do is, instead of hitting enter, I want to do shift, and then I also want to do enter while I'm holding the shift key down. And so I'm going to repeat it with the shift and enter being held, and you'll see the difference here between that. So now that I've got the text back here, if I were to hold the shift key down and hit enter, you'll see how it did what's called a line break, where it's going to be a return, an immediate return here, and there's going to be no difference in spacing. So while you're typing things up and formatting your text, you may decide to do that rather than having the paragraph type of format. You can see that there. And so if I was a tag writer, I could have put in a break tag here at the end of the Elite word. So let me go back here to the visual, and that's just something that I want to point out. If you're working with the text, and I know on the visual side of it, when you're typing things in, it may not look exactly the way you want. That's one little trick that people will use to do that. And I'm actually going to remove that text because I don't want it here in my post itself. What I want to work with now is, after this paragraph, I've got a couple different items here. I've got 4 different items, and those 4 items I've typed in and hit enter in after each one of those, and you can see them there. So what I want to do now is I want to make those an actual list, and there's going to be 2 different lists for me to work with. I've got the bulleted list, which is going to be an unordered list, and I've got the ordered list, which is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth. And so it'll automatically generate the 1, 2, 3, and 4, or I can decide to put in the bullets. And so what you'll want to do is highlight all of your text and then actually just choose the unordered list. And so now you can see that it's been formatted with an unordered list. And if I were to click on the HTML, for those people who write the tags, you can see they use the UL tags for the unordered list, and then I've got my list item tags listed here for each one of those list items. And so you could always go back and add more if you want to work with it. Now I will tell you that it gets a little tricky working on the visual side, so you may want to, if you can make sense of the HTML side of it, you may want to come back in here if you're adding more text here and there and it's not working quite right. You can kind of almost make sense of how the text is laid out based on the tags themselves. So I'm going to go back here to the visual. Now I also want to show you the trick. Now if I hit enter after this disk, you'll see that it automatically created another bullet. And so that's not what I want. And so if you don't want one, you can go ahead and hit the backspace, and that'll take you back to the regular text itself rather than keeping it within that list. So those are just little tricks that you have to work out while you're making your own posts and working with the posts. What I want to do now is I want to actually paste in a table for all the specs. And so if you are familiar with HTML and you're familiar with creating tables using the table tag and the TR and for the table row and the TD tags and so forth, by all means go ahead and write that within the HTML tag. For most everybody else, we're probably not familiar with creating a table within HTML itself. And so I'm going to go ahead and hit enter here, and I actually want to paste a table in. And you can see if I go ahead and were to create something like a table within Microsoft Word, and I'm going to go ahead and pull in a Word table that I've got created here, where I've got the product name and then I've got the name itself, and I go through the frame, forks, and all this stuff about with the bike. I'm going to go ahead and highlight this whole table like so, and then I'm going to go ahead, right click on it, and copy it. So I've copied my table. I'm going to minimize that. There are a couple different ways of me pasting in a table, so let's go ahead and talk about that. The bar that I have here is only going to show me some of the tools. I do have one more. If I were to show or hide the kitchen sink here, if I were to click on that, you can see that I've got a lot more different options as far as formatting tools. There are 2 different options here. I can paste as plain text, I can paste as Word text or from a Word document, or I could try to paste it in here directly to see what happens. And so try to use any of those 3 to see how you want this to work. And so if I were to paste it in here using plain text by clicking that button, you can see that my table, I've lost all my formatting for my table, so that's not what I want to do in this case. However, that may be something that you want to do if you want to remove the formatting from something. If I were to use paste in here from Word and do the Control V like it's saying here, I'll go ahead and do that. You can see that it has kept, and it's hard to see, but it has kept the table itself here for me. I can lightly see a border around each one of these cells. And so if I hit insert now, it'll gone ahead and inserted this as a table, and you can actually see, if you look really close here in the video, or if you look at the page that's created here, you can see that there. And if I were to go to the HTML tag, or HTML tab up here, I can go ahead and scroll down a little bit. You'll see that I have what is going to be a table HTML code written in there. I've got a border set up as one automatically here. If I formatted my table a little bit differently in Word, the border may have been a little bit different, but you can see it is used all the table rows and the table data tags that go through here and fill in all the content for us. So it's automatically gone and done that for us, which is kind of nice. If I come back here to the visual, I can see that I've got a table. And so those are some of the things that are a little tricky to work with when you're posting your content in there on WordPress. Now before I actually publish it, I've already checked for the bikes to be the category that it's going to be published in. You can go ahead and save a draft if you're going to come back to this later. You can also preview it to see how it looks on your page. I'm going to choose to go ahead and hit publish now. And it's going to go ahead and publish this to my website so I can actually see what it looks like on my site. Now you'll have to wait for it to come back and refresh. And I'm still using this WordPress.com, so I'm going to keep getting these. It says congratulations, basically you've published 3 different posts, and I'm on my way to pasting up to their first goal of 5 posts. I'm going to kind of ignore that for now, and I'm going to go ahead and just click back up here on the dashboard. And let's go back to the dashboard. And then I've got another tab open where my site is. And now that I'm on my page, I can actually either refresh it to go back to refresh the site, or it looks like I'm actually clicked on the actual article from a different one. So I'm going to go ahead and click back on Mountain Bike Adventures to take me back to my home page. And there's my most recent post. So I can go through and look at, I can see the bulleted unordered list that I've created here for me to work with. I've got my text. You can see the title is formatted a little bit larger. And depending on the theme that you're working with, some things may look quite a bit different. But my table has showed up, and I can also see that on the table itself I've got a border. Now just depending on the theme that you have, they may have overwritten the settings on your CSS style sheet, which I cannot edit here on WordPress.com's version of WordPress. However, you may be able to go in and edit that and make changes in the CSS style sheet itself if you're familiar with that. But I've got the border showing up, and I can manipulate the border if I wanted to back in the code to make it a larger or a thicker border. But this is the post that I've got, and if I were to click on the title for the post, Scott Scale 29 Elite, you can also see that now that I'm on this one, I can actually leave comments and so forth on this one and actually have a discussion with it. So this is the video on creating a new post. In the next video, we're going to look at modifying this post a little bit more by adding a photo and some different media to it.